IB Nation, Notre Dame fans from all over the world. We actually have fans from all over the world in our shows, Trevor, which I think is just freaking awesome. It just shows you the scope of Notre Dame fandom. And today, I'm actually in a good mood today, Trevor. I haven't been in a good mood in a very long time. And I woke up in a good mood today. And I'm ready to talk some football, man. And guys, we're going to do something a little different today. Don't worry. Don't worry. When I say different, that doesn't mean no buy, sell, hold today. We are going to do a buy, sell, hold today. If I said no buy, sell, hold, I think he might boycott, not do the show with me today. So we're doing a buy, sell, hold. But normally on Wednesday, we sort of do matchups with the upcoming opponent when we dive into different things. And I'll be honest, this is meant as no disrespect to West Virginia, to Virginia. That was disrespectful. I apologize. I love the state of Virginia. It's where I'm from. Went to high school there. My family lives there. Coached in the state of Virginia. Love Charlottesville. So that was not an intentional disrespect, nor is what I'm about to say. But, guys, there's not a whole lot else that we need to say about that game that we didn't say yesterday and that we won't say tomorrow. And I just felt like there was a lot more interesting things that we wanted to talk about. And I hope that you all feel the same way because, yes, Virginia's a team that Notre Dame can't overlook, Trevor, and they're a team that Notre Dame's going to have to come to play. I think they would beat Northern Illinois if they played head to head. So you got to look at it that way. But like the matchup is the matchup. When we dove into it yesterday, and we'll talk about keys tomorrow, there's just a lot more interesting stuff to discuss. And we're going to dive in today before we get into the buy, sell, hold. We're going to talk about a lot of the narratives that have popped up about the college football playoff rankings. And so we're going to dive into those. There's some Notre Dame related narratives that we're going to discuss and take on and challenge, and some Big Ten fans are probably not going to be happy with things we have to say. Some SEC fans certainly won't be happy with some things that we're going to say. And Big 12 fans are probably going to hate us after this, but there's a lot to discuss about the college football playoff rankings and just the things that we see and the narratives that are out there. And so we'll give our thoughts on those narratives. We'll talk about what we think the committee got right, what they think the committee got wrong. Now that we've been able to dive into it, look into. So like last night was sort of like a raw gut reaction. This is how we're feeling. We go on Penn State rants. This is meant to be more structured and like, look, these are the things that we think. We've been able to go through it. We've been able to dive into the resumes. And here's how we feel about things, Trevor. So I'm excited. And then when we're done with that, then we will dive right into the buy, sell, hold. We have some great submissions today. So I can't wait. Trevor, to get this going. But I have a feeling you might actually make me wait at least a couple minutes.
I do. Just a couple quick things. One, I love Wednesdays. I'm happy we're doing the buy, sell, hold. Brian's 100% correct. If there's no buy, sell, hold today, this would be a solo show. No, I'm just playing. But I am excited to jump into buy, sell, hold today. You guys know me. It's one of my favorite segments that we do here at Irish Breakdown. But before we jump in, Brian is absolutely correct. You guys know it by now, but I got to talk to you about our friends over at MyBookie. So it's a sports book. It's called MyBookie. And if you're anything like me and you throw in bets on really any sports game under the sun, then you're going to want to start partnering with MyBookie. So to get you started, they're super friendly. They're super nice to give you all the tools that you need to succeed. And what they're going to do for you is they're going to give you a deposit bonus. What you're going to do is when you sign up, you're going to use promo code IRISH, and that's going to double your deposit bonus. So, for example, if you do not know what that means, if you put in $10, MyBookie is going to give you $10 in bonus bets, which is awesome. There's going to be no better time to use that than tomorrow on MyBookie risk-free Thursdays, which I always use on Thursday night football games. So tomorrow night, the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders do not have a good rushing defense. And if you know anything about the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts have been tearing it up together all season long. So be sure to check out MyBookie for the risk-free Thursday bets. Also, be sure to enroll in their loyalty rewards program. They're going to give you an extra cash just for placing bets. So be sure to check out MyBookie. They're the sports book that gives you control and rewards you for every moment of play. So, Brian, you talked about it in the beginning of the show, and there's a whole lot going on. Now, obviously, us college football fans know how important Tuesday evenings are in November, and especially us as Notre Dame fans, despite where Notre Dame comes in the rankings, there's things that happen above and below them that are going to have implications for the rest of the season. Now, there's a bunch of different narratives flying around out there. Oh, there's a Big Ten bias. They're disrespecting the SEC. Notre Dame's too high. Notre Dame's too low. The Northern Illinois loss. What about all those things? So today, Bryan, we wanted to come on here and talk about, I don't want to say debunking some of these narratives, but we always want to provide a little bit of context. That's what
engaging them. That's what it's engaging those narratives. That's really what it boils down to, Trevor. It's not here to because there's some validity to some of them. Some need to be completely debunked. Some need to lack nuance. So yeah, it's engaging them, I think, is the way that I want to. I don't want this to come across as like we're just here crushing everybody that can't then respond to us because they're not on our show.
Right.
It's an engagement. It's meant to be a fact-based discussion of those narratives, which we, enjoy doing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I agree. There's definitely, we're going to cover a lot of different topics today. We're going to provide a lot of different context to some of the things that are going on, Notre Dame related and not Notre Dame related. But obviously, us here at Irish Breakdown, we're going to talk a lot about what implications these mean for Notre Dame and what it means for Notre Dame moving forward, what to expect. So it's going to be a fun show today, Bryan. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Trev, as I look at these different aspects of what we're going to discuss, and the first one is going to be, we're going to talk about the Notre Dame narratives first, and kind of why we think Notre Dame is where they are, but then also engaging in some of these narratives that are going around about Notre Dame. And the first one we want to engage in is this nonsense about Texas A&M. And listen, any fair conversation about Notre Dame needs to include Northern Illinois. No Notre Dame fan is going to be able to rightfully get away with, well, hey, listen, they're not the same team then. All right, cool. Well, if you're going to do that as a Notre Dame fan, then you also have to say, well, then you can't talk about the Texas A&M loss or win. You can't say Notre Dame's not the same team they were the first Saturday of September, but then they are the same team that played the last Saturday of August, right? You are who you are over the course of an entire season. And if you're a Notre Dame fan and you're engaging in people talking about that loss, then you need to own the loss. It's okay. I mean, the game happened. You don't do things to dismiss the loss, because in order to do that, you have to then throw out your best ammo. Because the first narrative that I want to debunk for Notre Dame with Notre Dame fans is this notion that if Notre Dame lost to Texas A&M instead of Northern Illinois, they'd be ranked higher. And that's absolutely false, in my opinion. This isn't an opinion. This isn't a fact, because I can't back it up with facts, because they didn't. But the reality is Notre Dame losing to A&M and then beating Northern Illinois would not get the same benefit of the doubt that Texas is getting for losing to Georgia and beating no one. Notre Dame would not get that benefit of the doubt and be ranked third. You like Texas. They would still be ranked similarly, if not lower. I think they'd be closer to SMU than Penn State in that regard, because they're not. I mean, there is a very clear SEC and Big Ten bias in the rankings, especially the Big Ten. I think that's a real thing. We'll dive into that. But this notion that Notre Dame would have been better off losing to A&M instead of Northern Illinois is just not accurate. And the other part of it too, guys, is it's easier to convince people that Notre Dame had a bad day against Northern Illinois. That doesn't define who they are, than to try to somehow claim credibility over a schedule where your best win is over a 6-3 Louisville team and your next best win is over Navy. You want to bump those down to where those are wins 2 and 3, and your best win is still over the number one team in the SEC right now. So that narrative is one that Notre Dame fans are using that we need to kind of get out and just say, hey, let's dismiss that one right now. That's one on our side that we need to not use, because that I don't believe that to be accurate. But there's another one floating around, of especially from SEC fans, who are trying to dismiss the Texas A&M game, and their new talking point is, and I'm going to read this because this is actually being done by someone who runs a website, who's got close to as many Twitter followers as I have. He's a publisher and co-founder of a Georgia website, and he started things off this morning with a comment that I want to debunk a little bit, Trev, and you're familiar with where I'm going with this one. And at first it was kind of harmless. I said, okay, He's throwing some spin down there, but you know what? We're going to engage in it. No big deal, whatever. So he starts the conversation off thus way. I'm going to just made that up. I thought it sounded funny. He goes, number 3, Texas, 0, because he's a Georgia fan who's pissed off that Georgia is, down to number 12. Okay. Starts off okay. Number 3, Texas, 0 ranked wins. Also, Georgia beat them at their place convincingly. All right, fair. Good point, buddy. Number 4, Penn State, 0 ranked wins. I'm on your side, Graham. Graham Coffee, this is the guy. I'm on your side. Penn State, we got your back. Penn State, no good wins. Lost to the only good team they've played all year. I'm with you, partner. Let's keep rolling. Let's go. SEC, Notre Dame coming together. Here we go. Number 5, Indiana, 0 ranked wins. 3 for 3, baby. I'm with you. Oh, you're going to bring up number 6, Notre Dame. First of all, Notre Dame's not ranked number 6. But he doesn't talk about ranked wins. He goes, lost to 5-4 Illinois, Northern Illinois at home. And then he says, number 12, Georgia, 15-point win at number 3, Texas, 28-point neutral site win versus number 20, Clemson. Okay. Someone is going to have to show me how to do the math. Well, Trevor, I was a history major. So I'm going to do my best to engage in math for Mr. Coffee. But I have found when you plug in bad data into a formula, you're going to get a bad result. I don't know if you used calculators when you were in school, Trev. I don't know if you just had them on your computer. But when I was a kid, we had these calculators, the Texas Instrument calculators. And when you try to type in a formula and then you put in wrong data, it would give you an error message. My dude, you just got an error message. When you have to change the narrative and change the data that you're using to make a point, when you get to Notre Dame, you're making a bad argument. You're making a bad argument. When you have to go 0 ranked wins, 0 ranked wins, 0 ranked wins, 0. Oh no, they got 2 ranked wins. Oh shoot, they got a ranked win over the team with the best record in the SEC. How do we change that narrative? You lost to Northern Illinois at home. They did. Very fair. They did. Lost by 2 to Northern Illinois. Bad loss. No doubt about it. You just got your butts kicked by a team that lost at home to a 3-6 Kentucky team. Just want to make sure we remember that one a little bit. You just got your butts kicked by a team that lost to LSU. So let's not pretend like this is all of a sudden some game where your team is just this paradox of virtue, right? I mean, just this wonderful team with no flaws on your resume. You barely beat that same 3-6 Kentucky team by a point. So if you're going to say, well, Notre Dame lost at home to a 5-4 Texas team, and you're going to talk about the wins over Texas, which is a great win, by the way, and you're going to talk about the wins over Clemson, it's a great win, by the way, you can't ignore the rest of the data. When you have to hide data, you're making a bad argument. That's point number 1, Trevor. Point number 2 that Mr. Graham Coffee made when some Notre Dame fans challenged him. And by the way, well done, Notre Dame fans, for respectfully pushing back on Graham's faulty narrative. Here was the next one. Notre Dame fans said to him, okay, in response, he said, thanks for leaving out Notre Dame's 10-point win, 7-point win versus number 19 Louisville, and 37-point win against a ranked Navy team at a neutral site, you absolute hack. That wasn't very nice. But here's what he responded with. Because they'd lose to Texas A&M if they played with Reed. Navy would be the 10th best team on Georgia's schedule. False. And then Louisville win, and the Louisville win isn't as impressive as the Northern Illinois loss is ugly. So Graham went from making some sound points where people would have been like, hey, dude, I'm on your side. We can have this anti-Big Ten conversation. We can be on the same team here, partner. He went from that to let me just utterly embarrass myself with crap arguments, Trevor. And so I just want to share what my response was, because this is what's so annoying about this conversation. First of all, Trevor, I have a question for you. When did Marcel Reed become Lamar Jackson? When did he become Jaden Daniels? Can you help me with this? He went 2 for 2 in the second half against LSU throwing the football. And by the way, Do we need any more confirmation after the Alabama game that LSU has no concept of how to stop a mobile quarterback? Hello, Lenore Sellers. Hello, Marcel Reed. Hello, Jalen Milroe. I mean, can we talk about that, Trevor? So first of all, before I give my response to Graham, can you please tell me how he all of a sudden became C.J. Stroud, Drake May, Caleb Williams, quarterbacks Notre Dame has faced in the last couple years? I'm just curious when he got put on that pedestal.
Yeah, you know what, man? I don't really have a whole lot of answers for you, unfortunately. I think that there's some, especially in the world of quarterbacks, I think that there is a very short road to leaving strong impressions on people when it comes to quarterbacks, in a good or a bad way, right? Think about how quickly people were to write off Riley Leonard after the Northern Illinois game. Rightfully so. Small sample size against Texas A&M, didn't play well against Northern Illinois. It's immediately, hey, who's the backup? Who's going to be taking Notre Dame on? Because it's not going to be Riley Leonard. Narrative changes a little bit. You see the progress that Riley Leonard made throughout the season. And now I would say the majority of Notre Dame fans, whether they like to admit it or not, will agree that Riley Leonard is the quarterback for Notre Dame and will be for the remainder of the season, barring any injury, right? But it's the same thing on the flip side. When there's just a backup quarterback, or when there's a starting quarterback who's just playing okay, and the starter comes in or the backup comes in and plays just a little better or adds a different dynamic to the game, like Marcel Reed can't, Connor Wegman can't,
and played great in the second
yeah.
half of that game. Like, we can admit that he played great against a team that has no clue how to stop a mobile quarterback.
Absolutely. But the narrative goes from here to here. And that's
it doesn't, Trevor. It goes from there to off the freaking screen.
Fair.
Like, you're being nice, and I love you for that. But it goes off the screen, Trev. Continue your point, but like, it's beyond that. It's beyond that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, especially I've seen it a lot with quarterbacks who are mobile, like quarterbacks who add that extra bit of, they add a different component to the offense that maybe a Connor Wegman can't, right?
Yeah.
And that's Marcel Reed. But that went from, since they did this to LSU, a team who I will say Notre Dame would also beat. I have, again, no stats to back that up. But Texas A&M.
I do. Notre Dame in the same stadium beat Texas A&M by 10.
Fair
in
enough.
That same stadium, Texas A&M beat LSU by 15, right? So there's some math for you.
Yeah,
there's some math for you, partner. Why don't you go ahead and put that into your Texas instrument there, buddy?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that. And Trevor, the other thing too is I love how they're acting like that's the only game Marcel Reed has played. So this is my response to that nonsense, because we've seen this a lot. Graham Coffey just kind of finally, he was the guy that put me over the edge with this conversation. But this isn't new. He's not the only one saying this. Has been said since the LSU game. All right. I like facts. You like facts. I like data. You like data. Right? Okay. So let's not forget that Marcel Reed has actually started 4 games this season. In those 4 games, they beat a 4-5 Florida team 33-20. They beat a 6-4 Bowling Green team 26-20. They beat a 5-4 Arkansas team who just got beat by like 193 by Ole Miss last week. Tad hyperbolic, but not as much as you'd think. 21-17. And then they played Arkansas week after beating LSU and lost 44-20 with Marcel Reed at starting quarterback, Trevor. And all of a sudden, that now that you knew to prepare for him and you knew he was a starter and you actually have some film on him now, all of a sudden, Marcel Reed doesn't look so hot, right? I mean, it goes 18 of 28, 206 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Goes 46 yards on 16 carries. Doesn't look anything like the guy against LSU who has no clue how to defend a mobile quarterback. I'm going to keep saying that because it's incredibly true. They have no idea how to defend a mobile quarterback. But let's point to something, Trev. So let's use some data. All right. This is what I'm going to show to y'all here real quick. Okay? This is what Notre Dame has done since the Texas A&M game. This includes the loss to Northern Illinois. Since these two teams have played, Notre Dame has scored 40.3 points per game. They've allowed 10.9 points per game. Notre Dame has gone for 419.1 yards per game, given up 278.1 yards per game. In Marcel Reed's 4 starts, Texas A&M has scored 25 points per game and allowed 25.3 points per game. In his 4 starts, that include a MAC team, a sub-500 SEC team, and a 1 game over 500 SEC team, right? 25.3 points allowed, 387.3 yards allowed. So they've been outscored and outgained in 4 games with Marcel Reed as your starting quarterback. And you want to talk to me about Notre Dame would not beat Texas A&M today if they played? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you kidding me? Tell me you actually don't watch college football other than your favorite team without telling me you actually watch college football without your favorite team. Because here's the thing that we do. We actually watch teams play. We don't sit here and tell Notre Dame fans, you guys, we could beat this team. Oh, how many times have you watched them play? Well, I haven't watched them play, but I looked at their stats. No, we watch these teams play. That versus that, Trevor, I'm going out on a limb here. But that, over the last 2 months, looks a whole lot better than that. If you added their points against LSU and yards against LSU in the second half, doubled them for the course of an entire game, then hey, maybe it might be close. Nope, it isn't. It's not anywhere close, guys. It's not anywhere close. So, SEC fans, I got some advice for you. Stick to truth. You have an argument on your side. We'll get to that in the next segment. We will. You have some data. Keep Notre Dame's name out of your mouth because they smacked your best team right now on the road. Your number one, your team that right now, if the season ended today, would be the number 1 seed in the conference championship game. They beat them by 10 and did not play very well. Go watch the game. They did not play very well. So don't come at me, well, Navy's this and Navy's that. Navy is not the 10th best team on your schedule. Tell me you've never watched Navy play without telling me you've never watched Navy play. You're clowning yourself. You're embarrassing yourself. Don't do that because you actually, here's the thing, Trev, they actually have a good argument to make about the Big Ten bias in the rankings. But that's why I said at the beginning, I was jokingly, hey, I'm with you on the Texas stuff. I'm with you on the Penn State stuff. I'm with you with the Indiana stuff. Well, hold on a second. Hold on a second. You went from spitting facts to spitting nonsense like that, brother. And now you've lost your way. So let me help you get back on your way. Leave Notre Dame out your mouth right now, okay? Especially if you're a Georgia fan. Because your whole 2 combined wins over Notre Dame the last decade were like by combined 7 points. Bama fans can say whatever they want about Notre Dame. Whatever they want about Notre Dame. Because we've seen Notre Dame and Bama play twice in the last 15 years, and Bama destroyed Notre Dame both times. They toyed with Notre Dame in 2020. LSU fans can't say jack to Notre Dame because he beat you twice in the last decade. You hired the coach from Notre Dame who beat you twice, and you gotten worse every year since he's been there. Facts, not opinion, not feelings, but facts. Okay? A&M can't say jack to Notre Dame. Maybe next year they will be able to say jack if they come to Notre Dame Stadium and beat them. That's going to be a heck of a game. But if your name's not Bama, shut up. Because you can't act like Notre Dame's not a good football team because you've seen firsthand that they are. Georgia saw firsthand that Notre Dame is a good football team. Georgia's better. They've been better the last decade. Not arguing that. They got 2 titles. They beat Notre Dame 2-0. But don't act like your 1-point win and your 6-point win when Notre Dame had the ball in your territory with less than a minute to go with a chance to win somehow makes Notre Dame this bad football team. And that wasn't even a great Notre Dame team. Go look what Michigan did to them about a month later. So don't embarrass yourself and lose your way. South Carolina fans can't say jack to Notre Dame. We spotted you 2 pick sixes, and you still couldn't win. So I'll have your back if you want to have a conversation about the Big Ten, and we will have one. Trevor and I will have one. But when you try to dismiss this game against Texas A&M and say they're a different team, if you want to actually be someone that generates respect and people don't look at as some clown that spins like every other media person tends to do nowadays, then actually use real data. Because if you're going to say the A&M game doesn't count, cool. Then the Northern Illinois game doesn't count either because they were one game apart. So if you want to talk about recent games, Trevor, Notre Dame fans will gladly talk about most recent games. Sagarin has this thing where they look at like the most recent games played and they rank teams off of dominance over. Notre Dame's ranked number 1 because they are absolutely destroying people. Since the Northern Illinois loss, Notre Dame is averaging 44 points a game. They're giving up 10.1 points per game. Let's talk about the rest of the season, and we'll leave those first 2 games behind. If you want to go there, I'll drop the A&M game if you drop the Northern Illinois game. Now let's talk resumes. Because here's the number of teams that have been more dominant relative to margin of victory since the Northern Illinois game. Here's the list of teams, Trevor. And that's the list. Nobody. So you're trying to tell me Marcel Reed against Florida, Bowling Green, Arkansas, and South Carolina has those numbers. A&M has those numbers. But you want to talk to me about Notre Dame wouldn't beat them? My man, you're losing your way. Don't do that. It's like that scene from Good Will Hunting. You're going to come to 2 truths in life. First one, don't do that. And that's my advice to SEC fans. You have an argument to make. Truth is on your side in certain ways. Don't do this. Embarrass yourself, and now you've lost all credibility. Because now the rest of the stuff you said becomes like, well, now I don't believe you because you just told me you don't know how to make a good argument. You were almost there. You were so close to making a coherent, truthful, non-biased argument. And then you just kind of had to go ruin it with that nonsense. But Trev, if the SEC fans want to say the A&M doesn't matter, okay, cool. Let's throw out the first 2 weeks. Now let's have a debate about resumes. Because I'll gladly stack Notre Dame's resume up against anybody since week 2. Gladly. So, SEC fans, we will have something for you here in a little bit. You will like what we have to say here in a little bit. But you're gonna need to go ahead and leave Notre Dame's name out of your mouth, because we have evidence that Notre Dame can go play one of your best teams in the first game of a new coordinator's regime with 9 freshman, sophomore eligibility players and 2 transfers that didn't play any snap in the spring, and they beat you by 10. Missing their left tackle in that game and beat you by 10. All-American tight end, barely played, beat you by 10. Stud D tackles, just kind of okay, beat you by 10. Started 5 sophomores on defense, beat you by 10. It's just not a good place to go, Trev, and I think that I kind of went out there and did a nice job of dismantling that. Do you have anything you want to add to this A&M SEC nonsense when it relates to Notre Dame?
No, I agree. I think you did a really good job of providing a factual breakdown of why the argument makes no sense. This is the reason why I hate conference bias, because you have a Georgia sympathizer bringing up 2 teams that have nothing to do with Georgia, which I think is weird. Again, like I don't understand this backing of, well, this is my team, but I would rather see the conference overall win than my team. And I think that's the argument that you go to, because you know that Georgia can't stack up against Notre Dame. If you're going to sit there and compare resumes, one team has 1 loss, the other one has 2 losses. Georgia's best wins are against a Texas team who had their arguably worst day on the field in 2024, and against a Clemson team who, again, same thing. So I don't really know where Texas A&M comes into that argument if you're trying to argue that Georgia should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. That's where the math isn't mathing for me. You know, Georgia should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame because Marcel Reed would have beat Notre Dame. That misses me. That's incorrect for a multitude of different reasons. But your argument that Georgia being ranked too low is because if in a hypothetical world Mike Elko decided to go with Marcel Reed over Notre Dame, they in fact wouldn't have lost by 10. I don't know. I don't really know where the lines connect there. So again, at the end of the day, Mr. Coffee, whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess, tell yourself whatever you need to. But the fact of the matter is, when you go and you look at those stats, and in the points per game average that Notre Dame has averaged since the Northern Illinois loss, that puts them at 6th in the country. With Marcel Reed averaging 25 points a game as a starter, that puts them at 93rd in the country. So, again, you can spin it whatever way you want to. I mean, yeah, I guess at that point, well, if Johnny Manziel had any eligibility left, he also could have beaten Notre Dame, I suppose. If we're just going to name people that played
one quick change, Trev, if you took out the Northern Illinois game, Notre Dame's actually 2nd scoring. Because in my data, I included Northern Illinois. I included the loss in my data. That was since the A&M game. If you took the Northern Illinois game out because they want to ignore the first couple weeks because it doesn't fit their narrative, then cool. The Notre Dame's averaging 44 points a game, which puts them 1 point behind Miami, who's at 45. So, and their scoring defense would rank number 1. So, since the Northern Illinois game, Notre Dame would rank 2nd in scoring and second in scoring offense and 1st in scoring defense. But please, talk to me about how A&M is somehow some really good football team. Let's not forget something else. The only reason Notre Dame's stats are as low as they are is because they played against MAC teams and they did not score 30 in either game. Notre Dame has been far better against Power 4 teams this year than they have those type of teams. If you look at Notre Dame's scoring offense, Trevor, to back up your point, and you just go against FBS teams, just Power 4 teams, Notre Dame is 2nd in the country in scoring, and they're behind James Madison, who's played 1 game, and they've scored 70 points against North Carolina. Notre Dame's a 42. Number 3 right behind him is Toledo, who scored 41 points against an SEC team, by the way. I believe they scored the same amount. Actually, they might have scored more, but I believe they scored the same amount of points against Mississippi State as what I'm going to look it up, as what Georgia did, because they played Mississippi State, beat Mississippi State 41-17 at Mississippi State. Georgia beat Mississippi State at home 41-31. So you might want to leave the MAC conversation out of it just a little bit here, right? Because I could spin some numbers and say some stupid things too, just like you did. But yes, Notre Dame, since that game, Trevor, actually would be even better than they are. So, yeah. How's that for you? Next closest is Miami at 40.3. Notre Dame and Miami are the only 2 teams averaging over 40 points a game against Power 4 teams. That's it. Texas A&M's 21st at 31.2. And you want to do scoring defense just for fun against Power 4 teams, Trevor? Notre Dame, do you know where Notre Dame ranks against Power 4 teams in scoring defense? So if you took every team that's played more than 1 game against a Power 4 team, how have teams fared against Power 4 teams? Notre Dame ranks number 1 in scoring offense and number 1 in scoring defense, Trevor. So please, 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 please spare us with the, well, if Marcel Reed played. Like, we've seen Notre Dame against Caleb Williams. We've seen him against Drake May. We've seen him against CJ Stroud. We've seen good quarterbacks. I know the SEC thinks the only good football in the country is being played in the SEC. I understand all that. I get that. But we've seen some pretty good quarterbacks, Trev. So your point is even more valid because it's even more impressive than even you said.
Yeah, I don't think Marcel Reed is going to be the guy that kind of resets the narrative of how Notre Dame performs against Power 4 quarterbacks. But like I said, at the end of the day, whatever helps you sleep at night. At the end of the day, I look at it this way. Georgia didn't handle business. They have 2 losses. One of them a really, really bad loss to Ole Miss. I'm not saying the bad is in like the level of opponent, but you lost by 18 points. If you're going to try to crown yourself as one of the best teams in the country, you don't lose by 18 points. I don't care who you're playing. Like, that's just my opinion. Yeah, like whatever, man. At the end of the day, facts are the facts. Notre Dame's 8th, Georgia's 12th, and they're on the outside looking in. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Handle business this week against Tennessee. Because then if you have 3 losses, yeah, your schedule is hard and that's tough. That's also the luck of the draw that you got. Yes, the SEC did you some favors with, we're going to schedule you basically against the hardest teams, which is the complete polar opposite of what the Big Ten did. And I know we're going to dive into it a little later because unfortunately the committee is kind of favoring what the Big Ten did, not what the SEC did. But if you're Georgia, you still have to go in and handle business. You still have to beat the teams that you're supposed to play. Like that's, if you're going to use the argument against, well, the Big Ten teams aren't in control of who they schedule. They just have to go out and beat who's on their schedule. True. Then so do SEC opponents. And if you don't do it, you don't do it. Like the fact of the matter is, whether Carson Beck is playing top tier talent or not, he's playing like garbage this year. There's no argument around it otherwise.
Against good teams and bad teams.
That's what I'm saying. Like in his last 3 games, he's had 2 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. But that's not well, their schedule's tough. And it's like, okay. And he was supposed to be the best quarterback in college football this year. What's the excuse there? Is it Marcel Reed? Is it because Marcel Reed didn't play against Notre Dame? That's why Carson Beck is playing poorly. I just, if you're going to come with a debate, come correct. That's my whole thing. Like if you're going to try to say things to back your specific team, Notre Dame catching a stray was a little weird to me because I saw that whole thread.
It just was unnecessary, Trevor. There's no point to you had good data to use. You could have brought Miami in that conversation. Why is Miami ranked ahead of Georgia? Miami's only played a couple good teams all year. They've got a bunch of close losses. You could look at Miami and say, look, Miami's 9-1, but they're real close to being like 6-4. They were getting blown out in the second half by Duke and Cal, and they came back and won. You could have used that argument. There's no need to bring Notre Dame, who has literally dominated every team they've played since Northern Illinois. Marcus Freeman's 18-4 the last 2 years. 16 of those 18 wins have been by 10 points or more. The only 2 games that weren't were against a ranked Duke team on the road, a game they led 10-0 at halftime, and a home game over against Louisville, a game they led 21-7 at halftime. And Louisville scored last to make it closer. Like there was just no need for that. There was no need for that. Because here's the thing, you have an argument. You have an argument to make about Big Ten bias after the top 2 teams. You have an argument to make. But you screwed yourself when you basically started spinning. Because anytime you got to spin, you've lost the argument. I've always felt this way. If you have to misuse data or spin data to win an argument, you've lost the argument. Because the truth is the truth. You can't really talk against that. It is what it is. So, I mean, hey, Notre Dame's a better program than Georgia the last 10 years. Well, what's your evidence, Brian? I can give you all this. Yeah, but how many titles did they won? None. How many's Georgia won? 2. Have they played head-to-head? Sure. But Notre Dame this, Notre Dame that, Notre Dame that. But, okay, well, who won those 2 games? Georgia did, 2-0, right? Like, the truth is the truth. You can't ignore it. And we're not trying to pretend like the Northern Illinois game didn't happen, but don't pretend like everything else hasn't happened either, because then you lose me. You lose me at that point in time. So that's an anti-Notre Dame narrative that, like, guys, it's okay. It's okay to admit that Notre Dame's really good. It is. I've even had a couple Ohio State fans respond to me on Twitter like, yeah, Notre Dame's playing really well. And they got to get some little backhanded childish jab against Northern Illinois. It's fine, fair, whatever. It happened. You know, I've seen some fans are, well, hey, this is a really good Notre Dame team. But for whatever reason, SEC fans can literally not admit that anyone is good outside the SEC. They just can't do it. They can't do it. Clemson wins 2 titles, beats Alabama twice. Yeah, but they're really not that good after all. Like, it's okay. This is why people hate you. It's okay to admit that other people. Yeah, okay. Let's say you have the best conference in college football. Okay, sure. But it's okay to say that there's other good teams. It's okay to say Ohio State's really good. It's okay to say Oregon's really good. It's okay to say Notre Dame's really good. It's okay, guys. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. I mean, the 2 best teams in your league are old school Big 8 Southwest Conference teams. It's okay to admit there's other good leagues out there. It is.
Well, yeah, because I think the frustrating thing for me around SEC fans is whenever a team wins the national title that's not in the SEC, the way that they spin the narrative is like the SEC allowed it to happen.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, you didn't get our best. You know, this is a down year for the SEC. It's like, oh, so every year that you don't win, it's just a down year. Is that the correlation that you're saying? Like, you just can't accept that another team is better, another conference has a better team? Yeah, I think that's really frustrating. But look, with the two things can be true. The loss in Northern Illinois was bad. True.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is also one of the best football teams in the country right now. Also true. So
Yeah.
I just, on both sides, whether you're a Notre Dame fan or not, or whether you're a Notre Dame hater or not, both things can be true.
Right.
You want to come to two people and talk about how bad the Northern Illinois loss was? Come talk to me and Brian.
Yeah.
We
Watch
talked
our
for
shows about it.
5.5 hours about it after the post game, and none of it was around, oh, it's just a bad day.
Yeah, it was a bad day. It was an inexcusable day. It's not. It's an unforgettable day in our fandom, but it's not an unforgettable day when you're arguing Notre Dame's resume, because it has to count. It has to count.
Sure.
You don't get to say,
Absolutely.
well, Notre Dame's not the same team now, so they should be the number 2 seed. Like if I were to say right now, I think if Notre Dame played Ohio State right now, I think Notre Dame would win. I actually believe that. So, but calm down, Ohio State fans, because that's not my point. But that doesn't mean that I should then rank Notre Dame ahead of Ohio State. Doesn't mean that, because Ohio State still has a better resume. So we could debate, like there's a couple Ohio State fans in the chat, and we could have a debate about, is Notre Dame better than Ohio State? We could have that. That'd be a fun discussion. But we would flat out sit down and agree, well, do you think Notre Dame should be ranked ahead of Ohio State? No, they should not be ranked ahead of Ohio State, because Ohio State played a MAC team that's got a winning record, by the way, and blew them out. Now, Northern Illinois blew out that same MAC team, but that doesn't mean anything, because Notre Dame played a MAC team and got beat at home in a game, Trev, they never led after the first drive. Never led. So Ohio State's got a better resume. I can admit that. I can flat out admit that and still say, but Notre Dame's still a really good football team. It's okay to do both of those things. It's okay for you to say, hey, I think this team would beat that team, but I'm not going to go disparage this team and say, yeah, but Ohio State barely beat Nebraska. It had a bad day. It happens. Everybody has one. You know, and that's the thing that drives me nuts, is this inability to have an honest conversation with SEC fans is really mind-boggling to me. It really is. It really is. And there's some Notre Dame fans that'll do that. I haven't seen them in a while, but there's a poster that just loves to do things to talk Notre Dame down. And that's fine. That's fine. And Notre Dame gave you reason to do that in the first Saturday of September. That game existed. That's my only point, man, is just be honest. Be honest. Be honest. Georgia will get their chance to jump back in the top 12 this week when they play Tennessee. If they beat Tennessee, they'll jump back in and Tennessee will fall down. And if they don't beat Tennessee, then guess what? They're just not that good. It's okay to say this is not a typical Georgia team. It's okay to say that. They just got crushed. Because remember, the narrative for a long time was, well, they haven't lost to anybody other than Alabama. Oh, they can't use that anymore because Ole Miss beat you. You know what I mean? Like, they just kicked your butt. They just kicked your butt. It wasn't like a fluky game, Trev. Kind of like Kentucky beating Ole Miss was a little bit of a fluky game. They kicked your butt from start to finish. And again, I don't care if you hate Notre Dame. That's fine. Hating someone doesn't mean that, like, if your hatred causes you to be a liar or be dishonest, that's a you problem. That's not a Notre Dame problem. That's why I said this. I hate Ohio State. I do hate Ohio State. Everybody knows that. I grew up in Ohio, around Ohio State fans. That's the reason why. But I'm not going to sit here and say, but they're not that good. They're not as good. They're not as good as this team or that team or the other team. Okay, now you're making yourself look bad. And my hatred for Ohio State's not going to make me be dishonest and sit here and tell you that I think Notre Dame should rank ahead of Ohio State. Well, what's your evidence for that, Brian? Well, over the last month, Notre Dame's averaging this amount and Ohio State's imagining, yeah, okay, but what happened against Northern Illinois? But it doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. Oh, so that part of the season doesn't count? No. All right, so are you going to not count the Texas A&M game? No, I'm going to count that one. I'm going to count that one, but I'm not going to count the game that happened the next week. Right? That's what you're doing. I'm giving you the same BS Notre Dame response that you are doing right now. I'm pretending that this, and this doesn't happen so I can then espouse my hatred of a team while then trying to diminish what they've accomplished, which says more about me and my ability to put together a rational argument than it does about that team. You get what I'm saying, Trevor? Well, I mean, Oregon barely beat Boise State. They struggled to beat Idaho. Yeah, okay, they got lucky against Ohio State. They're not that good. Well, that's stupid. It's the dumbest thing, like that's what they're doing right now. And you know what though, at the end of the day, Trev, you know why I kind of like this? Because if Notre Dame wasn't legit, they wouldn't talk about Notre Dame.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's two different ways that you can kind of look at where Notre Dame is at right now. I think people don't like where Notre Dame is at right now because people don't want to play Notre Dame. That's my take on it. Legitimately, there's been teams in the past where it's like, well, I don't think they should be ranked that high.
They don't want to have to come up to South Bend in December and
sure,
play this team
or just play them anywhere. Notre Dame is one of the hottest teams in the country right now. Like they are. Like that, you see it statistically, eye test, on paper, whatever. Notre Dame's one of the hottest football teams in the country right now. And you look at that, you're going down the stretch. No team's going to say, I don't want to play them at all. Think about our mindset when Notre Dame got the draw of Penn State in the first round. We were like, yeah,
please let that happen. But you know what? When I see them get Ole Miss, I'm like, I don't like that matchup as much, because I'm honest and I can say that that's a matchup. How they've got talented receivers, they've got a real good D line. That's a matchup that, let's see how this goes a little bit. You can be honest about that, but you're correct. They do not. Yeah, Trevor, they do not want to come up and play Notre Dame in the first round.
No,
they don't.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just you look at the matchups. Like, there was a reason why in 2022 people were outraged that Ohio State still made the playoffs without winning the Big Ten or playing in the Big Ten championship. One of that was, there's only 4 teams. There are some people that thought some more should be deserving. But then what did Ohio State do? Took Georgia down to the wire and had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. And then probably the worst field goal attempt I've ever seen in my life took place. But it reminds me of that a little bit. It's like, why are they in? Why should they be in? They shouldn't be in because Georgia's done this. And you remember Northern Illinois. You're going to put a team that loses to Northern Illinois in that. Look, if you're bringing up an argument of a team for a game that they played on September 7th, that tells me one thing, and it's you don't want to play them. That's what that tells me. And I don't blame you. I would not want to play Notre Dame
dismissing the game that was played the week before and acting like that didn't happen, and they're not the same teams and blah. Like, that's the thing, is use similar logic. Use the same logic. Use the same logic that you're going to use, because then if you're going to say, well, those games don't count, then okay, then I don't care about your 31-point win over Clemson. So let's just go talk about the last 5-6 games. Okay. Well, what's Georgia done here in the last 5-6 games, Trev? What's their recent record? Okay, well, they're 4-2 in the last 6 games. If you want to talk about what's happened since the Notre Dame played Northern Illinois, and you want to say, okay, well, they're 5-2. They lost to Alabama, barely beat Kentucky, had an ugly one over Mississippi State in which their coach shoved a player, because he's an idiot, and got their butts kicked by Ole Miss. And if not for DJ Lagway going down in the Florida game, who knows how that game turns out? A Florida team that, by the way, Miami destroyed, FYI, who Texas just destroyed, FYI, a week after you played them. Just one point, make sure we point that out. And that's why I'm still pissed at Bama. I'm still really pissed at Alabama, because Alabama could have shut all this crap down if they didn't take their foot off the gas in the second quarter against Georgia. If they didn't take their foot off the gas after they went up 28-0 and let Georgia get back in that game, we're not even having this conversation, because they would have beat them by 30, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Georgia as a playoff team. Nobody would be talking about Georgia. Georgia fans wouldn't even be talking about Georgia as a playoff team if Alabama wouldn't have taken their foot off the gas, because that's what that was, Trevor. That was them taking their foot off the gas and letting that team get back in it, because Kalen DeBoer, was a lesson learned for him. So anyway, so I think we've kind of addressed those, Trev. I think we've addressed the Notre Dame narratives, I think, relatively well. You ready to dive into the national ones?
Let's do it.
Or do you want to have something else you want to add about the Notre Dame stuff?
No, let's do it, man. I think we've covered everything that we need to. I'm laying on the bed of nobody wants to play Notre Dame, and I don't.
No. Yeah, and you know who I don't hear talking about Notre Dame right now? Bama fans, Ohio State fans, Oregon fans, because they don't have that same feeling because they've handled their business recently. You know what I mean? Like they're focused on their team. They don't have to spin it. So anyway, before we get there, Trev, folks, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. When you guys hit the like button, when you respond in comments, if you listen later, so like if you don't listen live and you put comments in there, if you share the podcast, all those things help our algorithm and help us spread Irish Breakdown, help us grow, help us be more successful in all the ways that includes, and allows us to start doing more. I've got a lot of ideas of things that I'm thinking about doing for our show moving forward. We'll see what do those things do. But when you guys do your part, listening, liking, sharing, and doing all that, it helps us grow even more. So make sure you guys do that, and we greatly, greatly appreciate that.